So I'm coming in here, and right now all I'm doing is I'm darkening in a few lines. Now this may not seem like much visually, or it may not look like much visually on the camera, but what you'll find is in the long run it evens out the tone of the wood, and it's a very, very critical step because I'm very anal about making sure that everything is exact. It has to have the exact same tone, it has to have the right coloration, it has to really blend properly. I don't want anything kind of left to chance. I want people to look at it and I want it to be universal. I don't want anything that looks out of place. So this step allows me to do that. It allows me to come back in and to kind of clear up or clean up anything that I missed. And this actually goes pretty fast. Making the stippling on the wood bark, however, is a very long and tedious process. The same with doing the fur, as you're going to see in just a moment. As soon as I'm done with this particular piece of bark, I'm going to switch over to doing the fur. And what you'll find is when you see that, you'll get a chance to see just how tedious it is and why I count out my fur as I go. And I count out the fur in 100 lots, in case you're ever wondering. You'll always see me post a count, and the count online will always be in hundreds. I don't get so anal retentive with it or so down in that I'm doing it in anything less. It's just a lot easier to score off 100, 200, 300, etc. as it goes. I kind of have gotten used to what it is, and I can tick them off pretty fast as I go. So this is an art form that has been around since the time of the Celts. It is an ancient art form, and unfortunately, well, even before the Celts, actually, it predates the Celts from the 300s, but 300 BC. But anyway, this art form basically all but vanished up until the 30s and 40s. It came back into existence en masse, and it was widely done in as a kind of children's craft or a hobby that was done for kids and people who worked in leather, kind of a tooling thing. And so what wound up happening was it very quickly got the stigma of being a kid's craft. Excuse me. So anyway, it got the stigma of being a kid's craft. And when it did so, it lost a little bit of its legitimacy. And once it lost its legitimacy as an art form, or maybe it never had it to begin with, it has made doing artwork like this a little bit more difficult for people who are pyrographic artists, because it's widely viewed as just a craft that any child can do. But bearing in mind, this is kids making signs at a summer camp or at a Boy Scout or Girl Scout camp, you know. Wood burning a sign with some big block letters is pretty easy. Doing this is obviously a little more intricate, and it's not something that you're going to see the Scouts doing. Anyway, right down here in the leg, I have got a lot of light areas. These hairs were originally laid in so that I have a grain pattern to follow. So now I have the grain pattern in, but I want to darken in the hairs. I want to get more of it. There's two ways I can do this. One is to go back through with the flat at a low temperature. I would have to lower this, excuse me, and then just go ahead and pre-darken. When I do this, it compresses the hairs, however, and then for the hairs to stand out, I have to add in more hairs. Or I can just simply build up the layer of hairs. I have this right now just high enough that I can come in now, and using the tool and the knife edge, I come in and I just simply start doing my hairs. Each click that you're hearing is a hair being scored onto the wood. and it gradually darkens out the wood as well. So it's a way of both adding more fur and also training the wood grain, if you will, to follow that direction, and most important of all, to get the darkness or thickness of tone that I need to be able to even things out. Because this is kiln-dried pine, my enemy is basically the grain, which you can see these grain patterns in the wood. Those are things that are very hard to cover up. There is a technique that I use using an X-Acto knife to kind of scrape away in between. It's a very time-consuming process, and of course it's part of what slows down the wood burn. So it's not just, it's not actually just wood burning that I'm doing here. I'm also scraping things away with a little X-Acto knife. I do a lot of special effects work on this, and it takes a little bit of time. It's not a, you know, if you're an impatient person, this is not a craft for you. This is not something that you want to be doing. If you have a little bit of patience, if you don't mind, having to take a little bit of time to get things done, if any of that is, if that's all right with you, and you have the ability to sit there and work with it, then this is a perfect hobby for you, or perfect art form for you, if you will. And you can have a lot of fun doing this. But again, it's just a matter of realizing that it's not something like, it's not like painting. You're not going to cover a large area anytime quick. Areas are done in small amounts, and there's something that you have to do carefully. It's something that you can overburn. The longer that I leave the burner on the wood surface, the darker the area becomes. So it's, a lot of people try to press down on the point, and you're never going to get anywhere pressing down on the point. All you're going to do is get deeper scores in the wood. When you actually burn, because of the temperature, it actually makes a little grain into the wood itself. So by doing that, if you're pushing harder, because that's conventional thinking, if you grew up, as I did, doing pencil work and pen work and all that, with pencils, if you push harder, you get more color, or you get more darkness. If it's a regular pencil, or if it's a colored pencil, you get more color out of it because you're applying more wax or lead onto the paper or onto the surface that you're working with. That's not the way it works with wood burning. With wood burning, the longer that you leave the burner down, the darker the line. So by going faster, you get lighter. By going slower, you get darker. And that's basically how it goes. So burners have to bear that in mind, and it's one of those things that takes time for a lot of new people when you're coming in. But anyway, by doing this, you can gradually get darkness of the hair, and by doing that, you'll even out the tone, and once you've got the tone evened out, I can come back in using the flat of the burner, and I can actually create more shadow.